Again, I dare you. I double dare you, mother.
Get busy living. You get busy dying.
Open the pod bay doors, Hal.
You're gonna need a bigger boat. And here we go.
Okay, welcome back to another episode of the Cinema Cult Podcast. I am your host, Cody Maloof, and with me, as always, my co-host, Dante Troina. And what are we talking about this week, Dante?
This pod is for us. This is for the true believers, the Tom Cruise shills. It's final reckoning week. We're on cruise control. We had a great time doing it in the theater. I'm ready to get into it.
I think we've both talked about this a couple times, how excited we are and were for this movie. We finally got to see it on Friday night, and I think we both really enjoyed it.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. I had a really good time with it. Long movie.
Very
Holy
long.
smokes, long movie. Kids in front of us would have get smacked up by Tom Cruise. I think kids in front of us did not have a fun time knowing that it was that long. They were Googling the length of the movie during the movie and realizing that we were not even halfway through. But for us, I think as the movie went on, it only got stronger for me. And just a bunch of holy shit moments, a bunch of looking at each other in the theater, amazed at what we're seeing on screen. Uh, One of the better theater experiences I've had in quite a while. You know, there's movies like Sinners that are a better experience and a better movie, but there's movies like Mission Impossible that have me bought in fully to just the ridiculousness camp of Mission Impossible and the whole experience of eating your popcorn like Tom Cruise and going to the movie.
Yeah, I think this movie is certainly flawed in a
Oh
number of
yeah.
ways.
Yeah.
But we don't care about that. I mean, the flaws are there, but I think it's pretty easy to look past them because the highs in this movie are so high that it really does balance out the lows. And I think we both left the theater, and everyone that was with us, I think everyone left the theater just kind of riding that high. Just
Yes.
very, very excited, and just very thrilled about what we had just seen, which was pretty fucking awesome for a lot of it.
I agree. It's a huge adrenaline dump. You know, you don't know what to do after the movie. You drive your car, you drive a little bit faster on the drive home, you know, like you're still amped up from seeing Tom Cruise do what he does. And even the lows of the movie, I was still having a good time because you're when sometimes the movie is being ridiculous, you're laughing at the movie. And I think the movie almost knows that to some extent. It does get a little convoluted and in its own way at times, and maybe is a bit too full of its own plot, but at the same time, I'm glad that we did have the long run time and did have the time to appreciate riding into those highs. And again, like you said, leaving us on such a great note, almost wanting the next movie, but being fulfilled that it is done now.
Well, I don't know because I want to get into the plot and talk about at least a
Okay.
little bit. I mean, this movie is incredibly convoluted, but I want to say that I'm not so sure this movie was billed as the last ride for Ethan Hunt, right? Like the
Yeah.
final reckoning. And I didn't really come away feeling like any real sense of finality in this movie. I mean, Ving Rhames, Luther, he died, right? So
Yeah.
in the previous one, in Dead Reckoning, Ilsa Faust, Rebecca Ferguson's character died. So I think that maybe brings some level of finality and stakes to this franchise that we maybe haven't had before. But I don't know. I didn't really feel like it was a huge send off to the character. It kind of just felt like another ride
Yeah,
for
another
Ethan Hunt.
adventure with Ethan. Yeah, I completely agree with that. I thought going into the movie, it's weird to put the expectations on a movie when you know it's the last because you're expecting something crazy. And I think what they wanted was just big action sequences. And maybe what we were not maybe looking forward to, but expecting is maybe a death of Ethan Hunt or a send off of Ethan Hunt into the sunset or looking at the sun rising on a grateful universe because Ethan Hunt saved everyone again. But we definitely didn't get that. We got another really high stakes adventure. The stakes were, I think, in
I
the
think as
movie
high as
they
they've
kept
ever been in this
right,
franchise.
and they kept wanting to tell you like, no, this is real this time. Like this is nuclear implications. Everyone is going to die. It's Ethan Hunt. He's the only one who can do it. But that's about all we get for the finality of Ethan Hunt or the big climax of his career in the IMF.
Yeah, he doesn't retire. He doesn't die. He just finishes the job like he always does,
Right.
and then it kind of just is over. So I was a little, I wasn't put off by it. I mean, if anything, I was a little encouraged by thinking, okay, maybe in 10 years we can come back to this franchise and do
Right.
one last ride for real. But yeah, I'll never be mad about maybe getting another one of these movies down the line. But it does feel just a little contradictory that this was kind of really billed as, I need you to trust me one last time.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
we did. We definitely
Of
did.
course. Of
But
course we did.
it just didn't feel to me like this was the last time, I think, in the way they might have wanted us to.
No, it felt like the highest stakes, not the last time.
100%.
Because even at the end, he says farewell to his fellow agents, but it's very much implied that he's still active and in the field at the end
Yeah.
as well. Like I think the movie wanted to land the there's no more threats after this thing where he can be at peace now. And I didn't feel, it's Ethan Hunt. There's always a next thing. And every
Exactly.
movie ends with something where it's either leading into a next movie or it's showing you like, hey, the plot's complete here. And then that's one of the biggest themes in Mission Impossible is that you pick up in the next movie knowing nothing about where you're at, and the movie takes you on the ride of the next movie. So I don't know. I wouldn't feel lied to if they came out with a 9 in a
Yep.
couple years. I'd be totally fine with that. I wouldn't be, oh, you mismarketed the Final Reckoning. Okay, great, we're getting another one. So let's go ahead and talk about the movie though, and
Yeah.
what happened
Yeah.
in the movie. We pick up with Ethan Hunt after the events of Dead Reckoning Part One, but Dead Reckoning now. I think it was very clear that this tried to separate itself in a way with the little time jump in between the movies. Whereas maybe if it was a part one, part two, I don't know if it would have done that.
Hmm.
But besides that, it very much is the part two to what Dead Reckoning is. The entity, the AI is still on the loose. It has very much inspired the people. They show a little bit of clips of people being part of like the entity's cult. Um, the other nations have slowly had their nuclear codes taken over, and Ethan Hunt was in hiding and now on the run. Like any good Mission Impossible movie starts, it starts with Ethan Hunt on the run, and it goes into the plot deeper. I think a lot of the first act is exposition and telling you how great Ethan Hunt is and trying to cement that legend of Ethan Hunt. It even has a montage of clips from the other movies a couple of times in the first act. How'd you feel about the first act in general, or just getting your footing in the movie?
It was just like exposition overload. I think it is like like the first like 30, 45 minutes of this movie is almost entirely dedicated to reminding you what happened in the previous movie, which I didn't love, but it's something I can look past and kind of just like get over. And once we kind of get into the actual story of this movie, you kind of don't even need any of that. Um, and
No,
I
we
just,
we definitely don't either. Especially
yeah,
that first night Friday crowd, we've seen it. We're
exactly.
I get why they want to catch people up, but for us was not needed. I rewatched them all going into this one too. So to have that exposition of all the Mission Impossible movies, like, yeah, I too am familiar with Mission Impossible. Tell me this story. But I'm with you on that. It was kind of a weird, uh, chock filled first act of stuff that I didn't need to see. I had a fun time with it, but I didn't need to see it.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting because, like you said, Dead Reckoning was originally titled Part One. This was supposed to be titled Part Two. And it's so funny because every time a big studio has come out and announced a Part One and Two, they always end up changing it. They can
Right.
never follow through on the Part Two
It's
because
cursed.
all the marketing people come in and tell you you can't sell a Part Two because no one will see it if they haven't seen the first one. And it's hard to get people to go back and watch the first one and then go into the second one. And so now with this is the final reckoning, but it feels very much like it could have been a lot more streamlined if it were a true part two, because we could have cut out like the first 30 minutes of this movie,
Right.
and just gone right into the actual story. So I didn't love it, but again, it's something that I can easily forgive. And it was kind of
Sure.
interesting because
Sure.
we saw this with my brother, and my parents, and my parents had seen part one or Dead Reckoning with me in the theater 2 years ago, and I think they kind of remembered, but they
Sure.
not that
Yeah.
much.
Yeah.
And my brother Max had not seen part one, so we just explained to him real quick the plot of Dead Reckoning
Right.
before the
Right.
movie started, and I feel like our explanation of the plot was more succinct and did a better job of catching him up about the past
We
events.
streamlined it, yeah.
Yes, than the actual like plot structure of the movie did, because it's showing you all these flashes to what happened in Dead Reckoning and certain things, and it's just really interesting that they really chose
When
to
it's
start
intercutting
the
the
movie that
future
way.
too.
Yeah.
And so it's intercutting events that will happen in this film or might happen in this film because of the
Mhm.
entity, while also showing you the past. So I'm like, I can see where someone would get really confused by this, even if they don't. If for some reason this is your first Mission Impossible movie or you missed one or two, you might get a little bit confused by what it's throwing at you
Yeah.
because there are new characters from Dead Reckoning and they're being laced in with flashbacks and future flash forwards. Um, I think a great scene that or a great example of this was the scene with Palm Clementif's character right off the bat, who I think is fucking outstanding, like a great addition to Mission Impossible in Dead Reckoning and in this movie. But they pick her up like in prison, and it just feels so disjointed from where we left her in the last film, where she was on
Yeah.
that train. I get that she probably would have been in custody because of that, but it feels like it's trying to fill the gaps so hard. And we get that hilarious scene of Ethan Hunt between her and the other agent, like, uh, put the gun down, like
Hmm.
trying to talk him down and just being Ethan Hunt. But also it just feels like it wasn't needed in the movie whatsoever, and just an excuse to put Palm's character on the or Paris, I think is her name, on the team, right? And so
Totally.
there were scenes like that in the first act where it felt like they were almost. I think Dead Reckoning had a weird reception because of the box office, because of when it was released. Like it was between a bunch of really great movies
Yeah.
that year as well, or big events. And I think the studio maybe had some notes on this film where they maybe wouldn't have in the past with McQuarrie's Mission Impossible films. And McQuarrie trying to lace it all together. He loves the show and tell story style, where he will be narrating something while also showing you what's happening in flash forwards and flashbacks. And it didn't work too well in the first act for me. Again, I still had a great time with the first act, and I don't have the. I think you're seeing a lot of maybe hatred even online for the first act and why was the point of this being here. I definitely think there was no point of it being there, but I was also fine with just seeing my characters in Mission Impossible.
Yeah, I wasn't offensive to me, because I
No,
think lovers of this franchise are just gonna look
just want
past all
more.
that.
Yeah.
They just want more. But I don't really think that anyone that we saw the movie with was even really turned off by all of that, because
Mm-mm.
it takes a little bit to get going. But once this movie gets going, I mean, you're in for a pretty fun ride, even just
Yeah.
as like a layman watching this movie. If you're not
Yeah.
caught up on all of the previous events of all the past Mission Impossible movies, you can still just go in and enjoy this as like a fun action movie, like with some of the probably the best stunts and some of the
Right.
coolest stuff you'll see in a movie theater this year. But
Yeah,
that
I
being,
was
oh, go ahead.
no, I was just gonna say I was once it starts going, it's going. I think you were absolutely correct when you said this has some of the highest highs of the franchise. The second act especially, I think, is one of the strongest second acts they've had in Mission Impossible, because I think the movies really tend to hinge on the first act, and there's a big set piece in the first act, and then the plot comes in. You get the title sequence, the plot comes in, and then the third act is really strong. In this movie, the second act was the highlight for me. We'll get into it more, but I think the highs of this movie show me why I still think Christopher or McQuarrie is the director for Mission Impossible. I don't think anybody does it better.
Yeah, I think he does a great job. He's really shepherded this franchise since he came in and started doing rewrites on, I believe it was Ghost Protocol.
Yeah,
He's really kind of turned this franchise into even a bigger spectacle than it was before, and a much more like streamlined, I think, version of the
yeah.
franchise. Something that's very sure of itself. Um, but
He's
that
given
being,
it an identity for
yeah,
sure.
absolutely. That being said, I think let's try to go through the plot a little bit, and just so we can, because we need to talk
Sure.
about the plot to get us to the set pieces. Much as I think
Right.
how they make these movies, they're all structured
Yeah.
around the set pieces,
Yeah.
and then they kind of just fill it in afterwards with the story.
I think
Um,
this was the biggest movie that had the set pieces first and then the
yes,
story coming
yes.
along with it.
I think Tom Cruise showed up in the writer's room and said, "I want to hang off of the wing of a plane, and
Right.
I don't care how you get me there, but just do it." Um,
Exactly.
but this movie's plot is insanely
Bonkers.
convoluted. I don't think I
Yeah.
could even adequately describe it. I've only seen it once. Um,
Right.
but essentially, like you said, the bare bones of this plot is the entity is going to unleash nuclear holocaust across the entire world. It's slowly taking over the nuclear launch codes of each of the nuclear nations in the world, until the US is the last one left. And Ethan Hunt somehow convinces President Angela Bassett, who was the former CIA director, who is now her character has now become the president, um, into giving him an aircraft carrier that will do whatever he and the crew will listen to him and do whatever he wants them to do. And
Yep.
essentially, the goal is to take the cruciform key, the one of the many MacGuffins in this movie,
Right.
go down to the submarine that was sank in the beginning of Dead Reckoning, get the Podkova, the MacGuffin number 2, which is essentially the housing for the original source code of the entity. And then we take MacGuffin number 3, Luther's poison pill, which I actually forgot about that he created at the end of Dead Reckoning, and upload that into the Podkova. And then once that happens, they go to the Doomsday Bunker, which is in South Africa somewhere, I can't remember.
Yep.
And then we take MacGuffin number 4, which is Luther's 4D optical drive. And somehow, once the Podkova and the poison pill are connected, the entity will try to take over the mainframe or something at the Doomsday Bunker, and then it will go into the
Yep.
into the
Yeah.
drive, and then they take it out, and then they trap the entity in this like little Lego brick, basically.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's essentially the plot, but again, I don't really think the plot matters here. It's like the plot is just
No.
the catalyst to get us to the action set pieces. It feels like that more so in this movie than any of the other movies
Yeah.
before. Probably partly because this is not technically a part 2 anymore, but it very much is functioning as a like direct continuation of Dead Reckoning. But yeah, I feel like us trying to describe the plot,
Right.
there's like no point really. It's more about the moments than the plot.
Yeah, and I think along the way, especially in the first act, they just tried to kind of set the stakes and reacquaint you with what was going on. They have the scene where Tom Cruise hooks in like Professor X
Yeah,
to Cerebro
yeah.
and hooks into the entity and talks to it, and it basically tries to. It's a guessing game of the entity wants him to do something or is predicting him to do something based off of algorithms. He has to somehow follow it, but deviate enough to give the entity something to not expect, more or less, is how I got it. Is that he's trying to um follow certain things, get to certain places like the Sevastopol, but also change the entity's code and fool it a bit and act how he's not supposed to act. And there's a lot of treaties with Shea Wingham's character, who ends up being, spoiler alert, ends up being John Voight's son
Completely
from the
pointless.
Shea Wingham, who got a little thicker for this movie, I think, to they cut his hair down a bit to show that he's John Voight's son. But there's even that scene where he tries to shake his hand and he says, like, we need to do what they don't expect us to do. And he's like, yeah, okay, whatever, screw you.
Yeah.
Like Tom Cruise is just trying to talk everyone in this ridiculous movie into the ridiculous plot to get to the set pieces. Um, there's a lot of politics in the first act too, with Angela Bassett, who is the president now, not the CIA head. There's Nick Offerman's character as well. I believe his last name is
He's a
General
general.
Sidney.
He's Sydney, yes, General
Sidney.
Sydney.
Okay, Holt McCallany, just given the "Why on earth will we trust this guy?" type lines as
You gave
Sterling.
him an aircraft carrier?
Right, right. And then a lot of stuff with Kittredge trying to tie together kind of the first movie into this. I think that's where John Voight's son, Shea Wiggum, comes in as well. Is they're trying to tie together the first movie. Liked what Kittredge is doing here, where he just does not trust Ethan Hunt at all. But there's this weird part of him that I think kind of wants to see where this plot goes, even though he wants to bring Ethan Hunt in. I think the movie never acknowledges it, but his character is doing enough where I'm like, I think he kind of likes Ethan Hunt in the back of his head, right? But lots of politics with those characters to get us to the second and third act, which are spectacular as we get up north into Alaska, into the Bering Sea, our homeland, more or less.
Not quite the Bering Sea. That's quite a ways away from us. But Alaska mention.
Right. We have the return of William Dunlow, played by Rolf Saxon, who was there in May 22nd, 1996. Remember that date? That's the date that has him convinced to do the aircraft carrier, right? But we have a lot of return to forms of the first movie, or return characters. And really, to me, like the first act is something that we, besides Ving Rhames' death, you know, R.I.P. Luther, the only character I believe besides Tom Cruise's Ethan Hunt that has been in every Mission Impossible. Besides his death, there's a lot of just getting to the plot in the first half of this movie.
Yeah, Luther is also very unceremoniously kind of
Yeah,
killed. Like he dies because, of course, Gabriel, who was our actual villain of the first movie, and now is
right.
just kind of like a cackling like madman in this one.
Maniacal. Yeah. Well, he's
Um,
cast off too at this
yeah,
point.
I think he's also supposed to have been driven some like kind of crazy by
Oh,
communicating with the
sure.
entity.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
I think maybe that's
yeah.
part of it. But Luther dies. He has to defuse this bomb, and of course he can either defuse it but explode and keep it from going nuclear, or let it go nuclear and it'll kill everybody. So, and this is the first like half hour of the movie, I think.
Yeah.
Um, but he dies, and then it's kind of never really mentioned again until the very end of the movie.
Right.
Um, but after that, I think this movie really picks up once we start to get into like the meeting scene of Ethan Hunt with the president and all of her advisors.
Yeah.
Um, that's like the start of when we really, I think we start to feel some like momentum. And then once he gets onto the aircraft carrier and everything after that, I think is when this movie really like starts to hit its stride.
I agree.
He gets on the aircraft carrier with Hannah Waddingham's character. She's some sort of general or something. There are way
Right.
too many
There's
characters
so
in
many
this
generals.
movie.
Holy shit.
There are just way too many characters in this movie that
Right.
like there's so much shit going on. I mean,
Well, and
besides
everyone's some sort of high-ranking official or secret super spy or this. Like they're all just so accomplished in this
right,
movie too.
right, like besides even like all of the new advisor general characters we're introduced to in Bassett's cabinet or whatever, whatever you call that.
Right.
Um, we also have we have all of our returning people from Dead Reckoning, right? We have Haley
Yeah.
Atwell, of course. We have Ving Rhames and Simon Pegg. We have Esai Morales as Gabriel. We have Palm Clementif. And then we get some new people added to the mix too. We get who is that? Greg Tarzan Davis, who his character switches at the very end
Oh,
of Dead
right.
Reckoning and is now with Hunt's crew. He's a
Yeah.
part of the team. Um, like you said, who's our guy from Mission Impossible 1? Forgetting his name,
Yeah.
but
Rolf Saxon,
yeah, there you
Dunlow.
go.
He's back. Yeah.
Dunlow, he's back. We have his wife in the mix now too. She's doesn't speak any English,
Right.
but she's a part of the
Right.
team now, I guess.
Yeah.
Um, and then we get so many people added to this cast. I mean, Katie O'Brien, Tremel Tillman, like there's just so many characters going on here.
Yeah.
It's easy to kind of forget who is who
Right.
and like who like why is everybody here? You know, like there's just so much
Right.
going on there, but in spite of all of that, I think the movie still definitely delivers on its promises of like high
Sure.
action, really fun set
Oh,
pieces.
yeah.
And we really get into that once Tom Cruise, in my personal favorite scene in this movie, once Ethan Hunt jumps off of an aircraft carrier
Yes.
into
Absolutely.
into the Bering Sea with nothing. No, he's like in his underwear basically.
Right.
Jumps into the Bering Sea because he's trying to get on a submarine and they can't find the submarine. He's like hovering in this
They're gonna
like
find me.
helicopter and they can't stay there. They're running low on fuel, so he just jumps out of the helicopter into the Bering Sea, and then as the waves are rising, they kind of
The
cover
jets come around.
yeah, and
It's
the waves
awesome.
are rising, and the wave comes up over the camera and then comes back down, and then Cruise is surrounded by all these
So
Navy
awesome.
divers. Such a cool scene.
Right.
And then he gets onto the submarine with Tremel Tillman, who I think is the standout new addition of this movie.
Yeah. Yeah.
He's so fun. He fits this perfectly. He's kind of doing the same like Mr. Milchick sort of like cadence from Severance, but he feels slightly different here. And he's great. He's so awesome. He keeps calling Ethan Hunt Mister the whole time,
Right.
which I think is really
Right.
fun. He has a great line about poking the bear.
If you wanted to poke the bear,
Right, you came to the
came
right
to the
man.
guy. That was
Um,
awesome.
So then he's on the submarine. We had this amazing scene where they go through a lot of like explaining of like how we've created this new diving suit that will let you dive to 500 feet, and then you're
Sure.
gonna
Yeah.
have to decompress and all this. You know, they go through to all this stuff. But the scene of Cruise exiting the submarine while it's underwater is fucking awesome because they're
Right.
also being tailed by a Soviet sub.
Oh
And so
yeah.
as soon as
Yeah,
he
yeah, yeah.
opens like the hatch, the Soviet sub is like right there,
It
like
was one of the
right
scariest
behind them.
things I've ever seen.
Yes,
Like it
yes.
was
I
terrifying
was not
and
ready.
not in like a jump scare way, just a way like, oh my God, the scale of that thing. And it had the almost like the Blade Runner type music, like the whoa
Yeah,
going
yeah.
on. I was gonna agree with you, like the from the time he jumps into the water onwards and they come up behind him, like that is when the movie hits into high gear. We have a little bit of conflict on Tremel Tillman's submarine there, where one of the people's trying to kill Ethan Hunt, just classic.
He's like a
Uh,
zealot, someone who has like become
right.
obsessed with the entity, weird religion cult thing.
Right. We have the don't poke the bear line. Meanwhile, we have our other crew, like cast, our side characters around Ethan Hunt who are in this cabin now trying to get
The
the drives to
coordinates.
transmit the coordinates, the floppy disk to transmit the coordinates to
There's
the
so much
submarine.
shit going on
And
in
it's
this
the only
movie.
like analog submarine, so that's the submarine they can be on. And I love when Tremel Tillman hears all this plan, and he just looks at him like, okay, like in he's terrified about this guy's plan. He thinks it's insane, but he kind of respects it
It's
at the
like
same
whatever,
time.
yeah.
He's like, I kind of like this guy. And then, as you said, like diving down, getting the water filled up, seeing that sub behind him, and down into the submarine was like terrifying, claustrophobic, amazing use of space, great sound design. And one thing, it reminded me of like a horror video game, like something you'd see in like Dead Space almost, or
Mm.
like the BioShock games, like underwater, in this suit, claustrophobic, trying to get through things. I loved the whole sequence of him in the submarine. I think it was one of the they didn't advertise it much. You knew he was going to go to Sevastopol, but they didn't advertise it much for the movie. And I thought that was one of the things that I would have leaned into in advertising because that just captured me right away, and just spoke my language. They haven't done a true submarine scene in Mission Impossible. They killed it.
Yeah, I mean he's going through this sunken sub and there's also air pockets in the sub and he's trying to
Right.
get to like the housing of where the AI, the entity was with the Podkova and the original source code. Um
Around the torpedoes
he's
as
navigating
well.
torpedoes
Yeah.
in and out of water. And it becomes a silent movie for about a good half an hour. I mean, there's once
Right.
he's in the submarine, he's not talking to anybody, so he's literally just breathing.
Yeah.
Um, and we're still like completely captivated, and like
Yeah.
the whole thing of like him struggling to get through there, and the submarine constantly flooding more, and then tilting, and it's falling off of a ledge to go even
When it
deeper.
cuts outside and shows it tilting on the ledge too, like amazing use of again sound design, but the way they're cutting there
Yes.
too. When something happens, it cuts outside, you see what's happening outside, and then it cuts back inside, and you're seeing the ramifications of that on the environment in a constantly changing environment. Just really cool use of the. It's funny because it's such huge scale, as far as it's a submarine at the bottom of the Bering Sea, but it's such a cool confined like stakes. Something like that reminded me again of maybe Dead Space, but even like Aliens, how it's so close and claustrophobic, and that dark gray design that just makes you like want to get out of there immediately.
Yeah, I think Aliens is a good comp for kind of the atmosphere of that sequence.
Yeah.
And then eventually Cruz is able to get the Podkova. He has to get
Right.
out of the sub. It's like falling apart. It's plummeting further down to the depths. And what Hunt eventually ends up doing is he has to take off his whole dive
Yes.
suit and everything, shimmy himself through this torpedo tube and out, eject himself out the torpedo tube with like just his helmet, his breather on, and
Yeah.
all the rest of his gear like dangling around. And then it gets caught on the sub as it's sinking. So he has to take off his
Yeah.
all of his gear at like
Dude,
500
he's the
feet,
best.
and somehow he executes a 500-foot swim all the way back to the surface, on one breath hold of compressed air, which is physically impossible, but we're not here to nitpick, science.
Right. Right.
Um, and then meanwhile, they have transported the
Right.
coordinates of where he is, so that way, his crew, including Haley Atwell, can be located above him. Because Cruz eventually Hunt gets close enough to the ice, and then he starts convulsing, and then he essentially dies. He passes out,
Yeah.
dies under the ice, but Haley Atwell is above him, and she cuts a block in the ice, gets him in this portable decompression chamber, which ends up saving his life. And they like give him CPR, and she like revives him. Um, and
Yeah.
that's all. And we still have about an hour and a half left after
Right.
that. This is
Right.
like a second act set piece that really is all just about getting this one thing. But it turned into like a whole giant
Yeah.
sequence,
It's
and
it's
it was
an
great.
it's about 45 minutes of the movie, right?
Yeah,
And it's great. I agree with you. Some interesting angles when Haley Atwell is reviving him as well. Some
Indeed.
very good picks by McQuarrie there. I think McQuarrie and Cruise are really good at, and they've refined this throughout their Mission Impossible movies, at having something that, it's a dilemma. It scares you. Well, how's he going to get out of this? And maybe you know what the end goal is or where it's going to end up because you've seen a shot before or it's flashed to it.
We know he's not
But
going to
then,
die.
right,
We
we
know he's
know
not
he's
going
not
to
going to die.
drown in the
We
second
always know
act of
he's
the
not going to
movie.
die, right? But they're really cool at creating the tension and upping it with, the submarine getting the mask caught on it and him having to shed it, him crawling out of the torpedo, like adding different variables to make it more intense while you still also know, like, it's intense, but you know the whole time he's going to get out of it. But the whole time you're also, how is he going to do it? How is he going to? And every time it's just cool to watch. It just really is every single time. I really enjoyed the action sequence going on above as well with them and the Russians who are in the cabin beefing over the coordinates because Dunlow. I guess the Russians knew that he was there as well, but they
There was
wanted the
just
coordinates,
so
and he
much happening in
he
this movie.
he put them on floppy disk. It's so ridiculous, but I like what's going on in there because it is tension filled and it reminds you of, just little bits of some of your favorite movies, like a Hateful Eight type setting. It's just
Sure.
cabin condensed, like just little hints of that. Nothing too crazy, but enough tension to get you through those scenes and make you forget about the plot because what you're seeing is fun. The shootout in that house as it's burning down is awesome. Uh, Hilarious scene with Haley Atwell and Dunlow's wife where she's trying to just point her where to go and you think she's gonna leave, but then she sits on the front of the sled while Haley Atwell mushes it,
Because
which
she
made
was trying,
no
she was,
sense to
well, no,
me.
she was trying to tell Haley Atwell's character that you need to drive. I'm going to sleep now. Like we've been at this
Oh,
for so
okay.
long. That's what she was
Okay.
saying. I'm going to sleep on the front of the sled.
I
You got to drive.
I don't know how she knew it. I don't know how Haley Atwell's character knew that.
Yeah.
Um, but just hilarious scene going into that, and it almost feels like that could be the finale of the movie, and we are not done whatsoever.
No, like we're not even close to done. And then so then after this whole submarine thing, which is just a fetch quest for one of the many MacGuffins in this movie, I was a little disappointed that the key didn't really end up mattering that much because it's such a
It
huge.
mattered so much in Dead Reckoning, right?
Exactly, in Dead
Yeah,
Reckoning, it's like the whole point of the movie. It's the main thing they're trying to get, and then all it really does is like give Hunt access to the Podkova, which is like one of the many MacGuffins. Um,
right.
and so I was a little disappointed that our main MacGuffin ended up not really mattering that much in like the final Reckoning, when it was so important in Dead Reckoning. But anyways,
Well,
um,
there's no tension with the key in this movie either. He just has it
right,
for
and
the
then
whole
it's
movie. It's
also
not about the key at all. It's
and
not
it's also
about piecing it back.
they also say that the Russians also have a key. Now, so
Right,
then the
right, right,
Russians,
right.
so then that
Yeah,
sets up like this race against the Russians to get to this thing, because otherwise, I guess you could like have more time. But also, there's a 3 day. Somehow they know that it's going to take the entity 3 days to crack everyone's nuclear codes. So
right,
they're already up against the clock there. But then we're also pitted against the Russians, who are like also trying to get to this place because they somehow also have another key. Also,
right.
even if they did have a key, how are they going to get down there? Like, because Hunt has like this very special diving suit that lets him go. I don't know. Anyways,
Right.
we can get bogged down in details like forever in this movie, and I think that's probably why
Yeah.
some people maybe are reacting a little bit adversely to this movie, because it's so easy to get bogged down in like, what the fuck are we doing here?
Yeah.
Like, what is actually going on? Like plot mechanics. But I'm
I think
choosing not to get too obsessed with that.
it's a very exaggerated version, like even more so ridiculous version of like The Dark Knight Rises, where some people hate that movie because it's just so ridiculous, and some people love it because of what you're seeing on screen. You can forget about it. This movie takes that to like skips a couple levels, not even the
Definitely,
next level.
definitely,
It goes up a couple levels. So that's why I think we're seeing a lot of different reactions online because me, I can throw that out all day because I saw what I needed to see in the
exactly.
movie. The movie fulfilled what I needed, which was that submarine sequence, which was between the exposition, getting to that third act of Ethan Hunt, the final promise of him. We'll see you at the movies, being on that biplane. Years ago, we saw the clip of Tom Cruise right after COVID, telling us about the biplane, basically
Yeah,
flying on the biplane, and the promise is fulfilled full and full in that final scene. It is absolutely awesome, despite all the things that we have to keep track of with the splitting up of the crew and with the different MacGuffins at hand, and what separates a good thief from a great thief at the end as well.
Timing.
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 That's right.
Yeah. So eventually, after the submarine sequence, we get the Podkova. We're gonna put Luther's poison pill into the Podkova, erase the source code from the entity, trap it somehow in the optical drive. But first we have to go to this big doomsday bunker, which is like built to survive the end of the world, has a bunch of like computer servers in there, and I'm sure it's like explained in a very haphazard way, but I don't really remember exactly
Yeah, I was.
what's going on in
We
there.
we need to get there.
We had
Okay,
to get
cool.
there.
Yeah.
And so once we're there, of course, everybody converges on this location. It's not just our IMF crew, but it's also Shay Wiggum's crew who's hunting Ethan Hunt down. And then
Right.
it's also Gabriel and his henchmen. And I don't want to get again too bogged down in like all the plot stuff. So eventually what ends
Right.
up happening is Ethan Hunt has to chase Gabriel onto this biplane.
The plan was to have Gabriel do it,
Right. The plan
which
was to
I
trick
never understood
Gabriel.
at all. Yeah.
The plan was to trick Gabriel into doing it, but then Shay Wiggum's group comes and
Messes
like
up the
foils that plan. So eventually what happens is we leave the rest of our IMF crew, Simon Pegg, Haley Atwell, and company, Palm Clementif, and the rest of our guys. We leave them in the Doomsday Bunker to defuse yet another nuclear bomb that has been
Yes.
somehow planted there.
Right. Right.
And meanwhile, Hunt has to go chase Gabriel onto a biplane, which there's two biplanes. Gabriel takes off in one, and then
Right.
there's just some other guy flying another one, like following him.
Well, he even says at one point, like, I brought a spare for you or something. He says some sort of line like that. And then I love, dude, this might be one of the better Tom Cruise running in the jungle there.
Yes.
With the lens flare behind him. That was one of my favorite Tom. I mean, there's a laundry list of Tom Cruise running scenes. That might have been one of
100%.
my favorites because the music hits the whole time. And him boarding onto the plane was just like they weirdly played it off as really funny while it's this intense action scene because it's him. They're acknowledging the absurdity. Like, yes, he's holding onto the bottom of the plane after it almost runs him over. And the look that the guy gave him as he's coming up the side of the plane, he's, chugging along and then, oh, what? And
I mean,
that
yeah,
just cracked me up. That was great.
He climbs onto the second biplane as it's taking off. He is able to
He
maneuver
just kind of
himself.
catches it as it's taking
Just
off too.
grabs
Like,
onto like the broad in between the wheels, whatever
Right.
the hell you call that thing. I'm sure there's a technical term. And then climbs up into the cockpit, throws the pilot out of the cockpit, eventually is pursuing Gabriel in this other plane, crashes his plane, gets onto
Right, his plane's
Gabriel's-
coming undone.
His
Yeah.
plane's falling apart. He gets onto Gabriel's plane as his plane like disintegrates essentially, and then it's just Tom Cruise hanging off the fucking wing of a biplane for
Right.
like a good like 20 minutes or so, doing these
Yeah.
crazy aerobatics, diving and flying over in these super low canyons, flying 5 to 15 feet off the ground. I think is
Right,
the
right.
metric Cruise gave us in these
Yeah.
interviews recently. And it is truly spectacular. I mean, it is truly breathtaking to watch this 60-something-year-old man, maybe he's like 62 or 63 now,
Yeah, still doing it.
still just killing it. I mean,
Yeah.
what the fuck is he doing? I mean, I cannot wait to buy this movie on 4K and watch the behind-the-scenes featurette and truly
Right.
see how they did this. Because even that promo clip of the "see you at the movies" and the that we got
So
like this time
crazy.
last year,
Yeah.
that clip on its own is fucking insane. And watching this whole sequence is like, how did they do this? Like, I know essentially how they did it is they strapped Tom Cruise to the fucking side of a plane and
How they
flew
did
around
it
and
is
did
he has the
crazy
biggest
shit.
balls on earth. Like, that's how they did it. He is the man.
It's insane. I mean, obviously we know that he's strapped in, right? And they're painting the harness out in post or some
Sure.
version of that, but he's still gripping the wing of the plane with his legs, and he's not even like his arms aren't
Right.
even like attached to anything, and it's like it's fucking crazy.
And while acting too. I think
While
that's the thing
acting.
that I always forget about.
Of
And
course.
then, he said it himself when I was watching some of the interviews this week. I'm like, I always forget, like, he's doing it, but he's also having to like make facial, adjustments to
And
what's
give
going
lines
on.
of
He has to maybe
dialogue.
give lines if he really has to. And like, you always just take, I try not to, but then you end up forgetting one little, ingredient that's in there and you end up taking it for granted on accident. And fuck,
But
man, this guy's the best.
that's why
Yeah.
these stunts are so awesome because yes, of course they call attention to themselves and say like, look how fucking cool this is. Tom Cruise hanging off the side of a
Right.
plane. But it's kind of easy to forget that holy fuck he's actually doing this because it is a
Right.
movie, right? And it's
Right.
the plot is so insane and so over the top. So at a certain point you kind of just believe it, right? And you're just totally bought it
Right.
and you're like, yeah, okay, it's like a certain point you kind of forget how cool it is to a certain extent. I mean, forget how insane it is that the fact that he's actually doing all this shit.
I love when
It's
he
amazing.
gets on the plane and Gabriel sees him and he starts taking the joystick and like making the plane go all
Yeah.
over the place, like trying to shake him off. And then it was interesting to see because Isai Morales, I think like he was just kind of forgotten about in this movie, which is kind of dumb because I think I really liked him in Dead Reckoning. I think he just
He's
has
just like totally out of place in this movie.
right. And he just has the face for a Mission Impossible villain. Like he looks so good in a suit. He just seemed like somebody that fit to me when I first saw him in Dead Reckoning. Um, but it's interesting to see the difference between when Cruz is doing it and how you can tell it's real, and then you can tell when Isai Morales has to hang off right at the end. You can see the CGI, and it's just like it just gives you the perspective of like, dude, Cruz does it so much better, and just there's nobody like him. He said he wants to make movies till he's 110. I will be there, and I think there's a weird part of me that wants to buy into the fact that he might just do it, because he is just like I've never seen. I don't think we will ever see anybody like this ever again. He is a one of one movie star, like a true and still at his peak movie star as well. Not losing a step, not Clint Eastwood fading and coming back, not Steven Spielberg making a hit then not making, like there hasn't been a drop off with Tom Cruise. Some of these great directors, great actors there is, and he's still just like I think his best work might be ahead of him for some weird reason. In action at least. He's an incredible man.
Yeah, I mean, I think you could very fairly call this like the ultimate like Mission Impossible movie as far as all the stunts go.
Yeah.
And I think yeah, he is at the top of his game as far as like everything that goes into making a Mission Impossible movie. Yes, the plot is insanely convoluted and ridiculous, but at the end of the day, you leave the theater going, "Fuck, that was just awesome!" Like
You still got it.
the
Yeah.
submarine
Yeah.
sequence, all of the fun lines of dialogue, the biplane sequence at the end of the movie, like that's really what you leave the
Right.
theater remembering. Um, and that's I think what we're meant to take away from this movie. I don't
Well,
think
why
we really need
why
everything else.
why would I choose to remember some muggy exposition when I can remember the submarine sequence or remember
Exactly.
Poke the Bear or remember him hanging off of a biplane like or him when he parachutes out of the biplane, his parachute burns up and he's still trying
Right.
to put the thing in
And
like
that's when we're
it's
thinking, oh, he's gonna
crazy.
like the
Yeah, yeah.
character might actually die here.
Right, right. There is a bit of suspense with that. They play with your maybe our preconceived notions on that. That when he takes over the plane, Gabriel gets his head whacked on the back of the plane. Great pop from the
Yeah.
theater when that
Yeah.
happened. Um, and the plane starts to burn up, I believe. The first
I
does
think
the
so. I think
second
so,
plane burns
yes.
up as well. The plane starts to burn up. He jumps out with the MacGuffins.
He's trying to put
He's
the two MacGuffins together.
right. He's trying to make the ultimate MacGuffin
Yeah.
so that Haley Atwell can grab. Wow, by the way, sorry, Simon Pegg has given a hilarious performance where he has a collapsed lung
Yes.
and
And
he's
he's
trying to give instructions while they're poking holes in him, trying to clear out his lung. Is insane, absolutely insane movie. I can't remember what all was going on because it was just
I
hitting
don't
me
think
on
you're meant
all
to. I think you're just
cylinders,
meant to
right?
like it's more of like a Tenet situation where it's like just don't try to
Feel
understand
it.
it, just
Yeah.
feel it, you know?
Yeah.
Don't try to reckon with all the plot mechanics because you're just gonna confuse yourself and then you're not
Right.
gonna be having fun anymore. Just have fun. Just
Right. I
go in and
chose I
have a
chose
good
to have a
time.
great time. Yeah.
Yeah. So
Um,
I can definitely understand some of the
sure.
mixed reactions that have come out from this movie, even though I think a lot of the reactions I've seen are generally pretty positive. But I think a lot of them are saying some of the same stuff that we've been saying, where the plot is ridiculous. There are way too many characters. It doesn't really make
Right.
sense, but holy fuck, I had a good time.
Right.
And I think that's ultimately what you need to take away from this movie, or that's how you need to approach this movie
Oh
in
yeah.
order to
Yeah.
enjoy it.
See cool action. That's what Mission Impossible has really become. And for better or worse, that's what we need to embrace about this movie. I think critics feel the need to be critical of the movie and take the whole movie, whereas I think we're taking like 60% of the movie that we fucking loved
Yeah.
and has some of our favorite moments in all of Mission Impossible, where we can rewatch the 40% while on, I know this is like sacrilege and maybe Tom Cruise would hate us for it. We can rewatch the 40% and kind of be mentally checked out waiting to get to that next moment, that next big scene. We're okay with that. Not all movies are meant to be completely locked in, focused on plot, tightly written, greatly crafted dialogue. That's not what Mission Impossible is. That's not what I was expecting. This movie gave me exactly what I was expecting, which is some badass shit.
Yeah.
And it gave me that a plenty.
I think this is a much shaggier movie than Dead Reckoning, which I think Dead
Yeah.
Reckoning is very high in my Mission
I
Impossible
really
rankings. I
enjoy
think
it.
I have it
Yeah.
ranked number 2 right now, behind Fallout.
Okay.
I think it's very, very good. It's just kind of a shame that it is a part 1 because
Mhm.
there's no conclusion to that movie, right? It just kind of ends because it was intended to be a true part 1 of 2. So I think retroactively that movie kind of gets dinged a little bit because they're really this is the conclusion to that, but it's a
Right.
very like ham-fisted conclusion that it concludes it, but it doesn't conclude the movie in the way that
Right.
we were expecting
You
it
would have
to.
thought, yeah. I would have liked to see, and maybe like Soderbergh or someone will make an edit of it, or like Ron Howard, like a 3.5 hour version of both the movies put together.
Yeah,
Because I think you really can sand it down to make this insane 3.5, 4 hour like
it
Mission
would be about
Impossible
4 hours at least.
Fallout level movie,
Yeah,
but with these two plots, because you could skip about 20-25% of Dead Reckoning, which I think is much more rounded out than Final Reckoning
I
is.
think it's a better movie than this for sure.
Oh yeah.
It's a better
And I think
plot,
you can
better
take out
story.
about 40% of this movie and still have what you need from it. And I always love the exposition scenes where they have too many characters, because 4 or 5 characters are sitting around Ethan or sitting around a character that's getting something explained to him, maybe the president, Angela Bassett, in some circumstances, and they're finishing each other's lines or asking like, okay, it's his turn to ask a question. Then he asks a question about Mission Impossible 1. Then he asks a question about Ghost Protocol. Then they're trying to like exposition you to death while also giving the characters room to be a character. And it's so awkward. And we can just lose that, as much as I do like, you gave him permission to take an aircraft carrier? Like, I'm cool with that line. But we didn't need like Angela Bassett getting assassinated almost, right? And Nick Offerman's
Yeah, we
character
definitely
dying.
didn't need that.
Did not need that. Love Nick Offerman. Angela Bassett's one of the most talented actresses out there right now. I would have rather taken more scenes with Tom Cruise, or just not that scene at all.
Yeah, the movie is it's too much, right? It's there's
Yeah,
too much going on here for sure. But if this is the final, the actual proverbial final reckoning, if we never see this character again, I think yeah, he's gone out on a really high note, and maybe not the most complete story for Ethan Hunt to go out on, but again, it is picking up where Dead Reckoning left off. And at the end of the day, I think we got our money's worth here. I think we got what we came to the movies to
absolutely.
see. And going into this movie, seeing the insane runtime of what 2 hours and 54 minutes or
51 or
something,
something.
2 hours
Yeah,
and 50 plus minutes. Um, I think we kind of expected that, okay, there's going to be maybe
a
a little
lot of
too much
stuff.
meat on this
Yeah,
bone here. We might not be able to swallow quite all of it, but we
or a
really
little
enjoyed it.
little bit too much bone in our steak.
There
Actually,
you go.
maybe is
Yeah, maybe, definitely the fat could have been trimmed off, but,
right.
we still liked it anyways. So my final thoughts here, my like prevailing thoughts on this movie are I'm fucking really glad we got it. And I'm
Yeah,
really glad that it's doing as well as it is. I think it's significantly outperforming Dead Reckoning. Um,
yeah,
this movie is also coming out at a much better time where there's not a lot competing with it. Obviously, you mentioned earlier, Dead Reckoning ran into the buzzsaw of Oppenheimer and Barbie. It was released like 2 weeks after Oppenheimer and
right,
Barbie, I think.
right.
So it had no chance at like really gaining that huge traction at the box office that I think this one is. This one is, I think, playing pretty well across the country. It's an insane budget. I think it purportedly over $400 million to make this movie, which is fucking crazy. Um,
Yeah.
but you can tell. You could tell where every
Oh yeah.
dollar
Oh,
went to this
it
movie.
looks so good.
You know,
Yeah.
it's not like an Avengers movie where it's 300 million and 100 million went to Robert Downey Jr.
Right.
You know, like all the money is on screen here. We're not paying Tom Cruise a ridiculous salary and then just cobbling everything around him. We are really putting the money on screen, and I really, really appreciate that about all of these movies, and this one specifically.
Yeah, I think this is just further proof for me. Like nobody does it like Tom Cruise. Christopher McQuarrie, what are you gonna do next? I'm really excited for him becoming a director outside of Mission Impossible. You know, he's done Reacher with Tom Cruise. He produced Top Gun Maverick.
Mm-hmm.
He's been just Tom Cruise's right hand man. He's the only director of Mission Impossible to direct multiple Mission Impossibles, and he, you know, in the same way that like David Yates took over Harry Potter forever, McQuarrie took over Mission Impossible because it was just such a good fit.
You're right.
I don't see anybody better than him for these movies. You know, I think De Palma might be a better director. Brad Bird might be a better storyteller. J.J. Abrams had an amazing hot streak, but McQuarrie is just fits like a glove on Mission Impossible. I think they stuck the landing for me. Didn't have like you said a huge sense of finality to it. It didn't have like that. It had a shot of Ethan going back into the field, presumably, or going back into hiding or whatever he's going to do, right? It had a shot at the end where it feels like he might be going on a next mission instead of maybe what I thought, which was like a death or him watching the sunrise
He's not like
or
hanging up his
like
cleats, you know, there's no
it's not
retirement
right. It's
scene or
not
anything like that.
him and Haley Atwell's character.
Yeah,
I keep
Grace.
Grace. Jeez, I kept forgetting her name. And not due to the performance, great performance, just me forgetting the name. There wasn't him and Haley Atwell's character riding off into the sunset or something, or having their final kiss. There was not that.
No.
Much to the disappointment of the kids in front of us who were recording with their flash on, hoping for a final kiss.
At the end of the
Idiots.
movie, two kids in front of
Idiots.
us recording the screen with their flash on. Tom Cruise would have killed those kids,
Right. Yeah,
and we wanted to
no,
as well.
nobody would have reported it either. Everyone would have been okay with that.
Yeah.
Um, from the start of the movie and Tom Cruise giving his message, like the thank you, and we worked our hardest to make the best experience we could. Uh, I think this is worth the price of admission anywhere in the world, man.
100%.
Like this is see it on the biggest screen you can. We didn't get to see it on the biggest screen we could have, but we still had a great time in the theater. I love movies. I love theaters. I love popcorn. This was that. This was one for us. So well done, Tom Cruise, and just thank you, dude. This is awesome.
Look, there are two options this weekend at the movie theater, like two main options, and it's this and it's Lilo and Stitch. These are the two movies that were released over the weekend. Um, do your kids a favor and take them to Mission Impossible: The Final Reckoning,
Right.
because we already know what happens in Lilo and Stitch. We know the plot, right?
Right. You've seen
we
it in its
don't
best version.
we don't fucking need Lilo and Stitch reboot, remake, whatever. You know, I can already tell you how that movie is going to turn out. This
Yep.
movie, take your kids to this. Even if they want to go see Lilo and Stitch, do them a favor and tell them no. I'm taking you to go see a real movie. You're going to go
Right.
see Ethan Hunt. You're going to trust him one last time. Um,
Yep.
There's no reason to see any other movie this weekend besides this if you're going to the movie theater.
This will be one of those movies that if you saw it in theaters, you'll just always have a bias towards it. I think we talked about it a bit with Sinners and with like these huge action movies throughout the years, and even like Fallout, into Dead Reckoning, into this. I have a bias towards those ones because they're the ones I've seen in theaters from Ghost Protocol onwards. Um, this is just one of those that you will never forget. You'll never see it in a better place than how you'll see it this weekend. So exactly, I agree with you. Like, do your kids a favor, take them on a binge. I went through the whole binge. It was awesome. Just retreading some of the movies and realizing that some of them were better or worse than I thought, but loving them all for their own little ways. And then heading into this, it was just the ultimate like cruise control experience throughout the week. I had such a good time. Um, like you said, just take your kids, show them the Final Reckoning. They'll be forever grateful for it. He's a hero. Tom is a hero. He's saving cinema. He $400 million, dude. Go put your money into something that put its money into you. They wanted to make the greatest experience for us in the theaters, and you can feel that. And so put your money towards this.
I think my prevailing sentiment, the last thing I really want to say about this is just thank you, Tom Cruise. Like seriously,
Right,
like honestly,
right,
genuinely,
yeah.
thank you.
Yeah.
You're the fucking best. And every time he does an interview, it just gets me fired up. Like him on the McAfee show was just getting me fucking jazzed, getting me so juiced to go see this movie.
Yeah.
And you can tell in all his interviews how passionate he is about the craft of filmmaking. And it totally shows up in his movies, in Dead Reckoning, in this, in Top Gun Maverick. I mean,
Yeah.
he's been on such a crazy run these past 5-6 years or so. And just, I mean, and obviously way, way before that too. But I just mean
Sure.
in recent memory, it feels like he has become like
He's like
the savior,
re-apexed. Yeah.
like the savior
Yeah.
of the theatrical experience. And I just want to say thank you for giving us these fucking great movies, giving us stuff to talk about, to enjoy in this communal experience at the movie theater. No one's doing it like him. And that's really, every time I watch a Mission Impossible movie, I am just filled with the spirit of Tom Cruise
Right.
and of like
Right.
movies are the best. And we all just need to watch more movies
I agree.
and make more movies and just do crazy shit. And please never stop, Tom. If we'll never listen to this, but please, thank you from the
Right.
bottom of my heart. You're the
Right.
fucking man. Yeah, this just gets me so fucking hyped. That's all I got.
That's it. I think that's a great way to end it. If there is no Tom Cruise, there is no us. We love Tom Cruise. Thank you, Tom.
Nope. All right, final reckoning, final thoughts. It was fucking good. I mean, a lot going
Yeah.
on, but fuck, we still liked it at the end of the day.
Yep.
Yeah, remember follow us Instagram, Twitter, Cinema Cult Pod, Dante and I on Letterboxd, and Instagram and Twitter. And yeah, forever, baby. I need you to trust me one last time, and mission accomplished.